Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic. The Kitchen Table series returns with deck tech number 57, Mono Green Wolves. What's up, MTG BC, baby? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Returning once more is the Kitchen Table series, the channel's longest running content series. And in today's video, number 57 of the series, deck tech number 57, we are going to look at some mono green wolves. So let's get right down to the 60. As generally is customary here during our Kitchen Table series, we are going to begin with the mana base. There's not going to be too many thrills, chills, or spills with respect to the lands outside of us having nothing but snow-covered basics. There's 20 of them in there, 20 snow-covered forests, and we're going to talk a little bit more about why they're snow-covered momentarily. So that rounds out the lands. Now let's talk about our artifact ramp. We have, of course, our Soul Ring because we're playing at the Kitchen Table, so we are going to include a Soul Ring. And just moments ago, we were foreshadowing why we are including some snow, why all of the lands in our deck are snow-covered versus just regular old forest. Well, that's for the extra planar lens. An artifact for 3 with the imprint mechanic. When it ETBs, we may exile a land we control from the game, which will be a snow-covered forest. Whenever a land with the same name as the imprinted card is tapped for mana, we add 1 additional mana to our mana pool for any type that land produced. So if we're going to double all of the forests, all of the mana that our forests can produce, we don't want our opponents to do the same. So that's why we've included snow-covered forests. I mean, let's be honest, it's not like green is an unpopular color in Magic, because the extra planar lens reads whenever a land, not a land we control. So with us having snow-covered forests, it prevents our opponents from tapping their pitiful regular forests to get 2 green mana. Advantage, Burgeoning. So 1 extra planar lens going in addition to 1 copy of Caged Sun. It's an artifact for 6. When it ETBs, we choose a color. This is mono green, so we're choosing, you got it folks, we're choosing green. Creatures we control the chosen color get +1/+1, and whenever a land's ability adds 1 or more mana of the chosen color to our mana pool, we add an additional mana of that color. So with an extra planar lens and a Caged Sun in play, we can tap our forest, our snow-covered forest, for 3 green mana. All right, so before we get to the wolves that we're going to be playing with in this deck, we're going to continue talking about our mana ramp. We talked about our 20 basics. We showcased 3 artifacts that help to ramp up our mana. Now let's show some creatures that do the same. We are going to play with 3 copies of Llanowar Elves. 1 green, 1/1, turn it sideways, add a green mana to our mana pool. It will be important as we get further along in this deck tech to pay attention to the fact that this is an elf. More on that to come. 3 copies of Llanowar Elves. And a Llanowar Elf variant is the Elvish Mystic. It is the exact same thing. This is pretty much Llanowar Elves version 2.0 in this deck, and this also is 3 copies. So we have 6 mana dorks as we slap them on top of our 20 basics and our 3 mana helpful artifacts. So that's half the deck almost at 29 cards, and we're still not done. Next up, we're going to include a copy of Druid's Repository, a very, very underloved and unheralded enchantment from Avacyn Restored. It's 1 and 2 green, and whenever a creature we control attacks, we put a charge counter on Druid's Repository. It does not have to deal combat damage to a player. It does not have to deal combat damage to a creature. All it has to do is turn sideways and begin attacking. We may remove a charge counter from Druid's Repository to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So we send our wolves into combat, or maybe if we need to, we send our elves into combat, fill this enchantment with charge counters, and then remove them for additional mana. That is card number 30. The last of our spells that are going to help us to ramp out our mana in a ridiculous way, 1 copy of Growing Rites of Itlamok. It's a legendary enchantment for 2 and a green. When it ETBs, we look at the top 4 cards of our library. We may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into our hand, and the rest go on the bottom of our library in any order. At the beginning of our end step, this is the most important part, if we control 4 or more creatures, which we will, we transform Growing Rites of Itlamok into a version that's even better than Gaia's Cradle, and that is going to be Itlamok, Cradle of Sun. We can tap it for a green mana, or we can tap it and add a green mana to our mana pool for each creature we control. Jumping through the hoops to get the Growing Rites of Itlamok to transform into the Cradle of the Sun is not going to be difficult in this deck, and the result is definitely worth the investment of 3 green mana. As I said, we get a better version of Gaia's Cradle. 1 copy of Growing Rites of Itlamok, and that is 31 spells and lands that are going to help with our mana, because we are going to need them to create as many wolves as we possibly can. All right, with that being said, let's get down to the wolf creatures we've included in this deck. And we have 3 play sets, and they're all sharing the exact same spot on the mana curve, which is another reason why we have so much mana ramp in this deck, because we want to make sure we can hit that sweet spot as quickly as possible and then as frequently as possible. So let's begin, and they're all 4 drops. We're going to begin with the Night Pack Ambusher. 2 and 2 green for 4/4. It has flash. It's also a wolf lord, so it's going to give other wolves we control +1/+1. And at the beginning of our end step, if we did not cast a spell this turn, we create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. 4 of these bad boys to cast at the end of our opponent's turn. Next set of creatures we're including is the Wolfbriar Elemental. Now, it is not a wolf by itself, of course, because it is just an elemental. 2 and 2 green for 4/4. However, the multi-kicker is what really makes this inclusion so juicy. For every forest we pay, in addition to the spell's converted mana cost, we create a 2/2 wolf green creature, a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So with all the mana that we have just inundated in this deck, we should be able to multi-kick the Wolfbriar Elemental many times. And then we have a nice sizable chump blocker, or a 4/4 that we can send into combat if needed. 4 copies of Wolfbriar Elemental. And the last play set of creatures, and we're going to trigger our memory of the foreshadowing that we talked about, that it's important that we had the elves earlier during the part of our deck tech when we were infusing the mana base, and that is for Wren's Run Packmaster. Again, it's not a wolf, but it is a 5/5 for 3 and a green mana. And it has champion, and we have to champion an elf. Again, having these 6 elf druids as our mana dorks makes the ability to champion Wren's Run Packmaster much easier. And for anyone that's unfamiliar with champion, when this creature ETBs, we have to sacrifice it unless we exile another elf we control. Then, when Wren's Run Packmaster leaves the battlefield, we return the exiled elf to the battlefield. So that's why we included the mana elf, so that we can get the Wren's Run Packmaster into play and not have to sacrifice it as soon as it ETBs. This gives wolves we control Death Touch, but more importantly, for every 2 and a green we pay, we create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So we have a sizable body for just 4 mana for the cost of exiling one of our mana dorks. This gives all of our wolves Death Touch, which is going to be a headache for our opponents because we're going to have so many of them. And we can use this creature to create wolf creature tokens. Wren's Run Packmaster is going to do it all in this deck. 4 copies of this elf warrior. And of course, you can always have one Wren's Run Packmaster champion another if we need to do so. All right, next up, we are going to talk about some spells that are included in this deck that are going to create some wolf tokens. And for that, we're going to have an entire playset of Second Harvest. It's an instant for 2 and 2 green. Again, there's that coveted 4 CMC spot. For each token we control, we put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. So if we have 4 wolf tokens in play, we're going to pay 4 mana and create 4 more. 4 is the number of the day, folks. 4 copies of Second Harvest. All right, next up, we are going to include a full playset of Arlen, Voice of the Pack. Planeswalker for 4 and 2 green. She enters with 7 loyalty counters, and each creature we control, that's a wolf or werewolf, ETBs with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. For the purposes of this deck, it's just going to be our wolves. We can take 2 loyalty counters off of Arlen to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So when it's all said and done, we will have invested 6 mana into Arlen, and we will be able to take off 6 loyalty counters 2 at a time for 3 wolves to create 3 3/3 wolves. That's 9 power and 9 toughness stretched across 3 bodies for the investment of 6 mana and some time. Arlen, Voice of the Pack, is a very sneaky good card in this mono green wolf deck. 4 copies of Arlen. All right, so let's talk about some of the removal spells that we've included in this deck, and we're going to begin with one that's just absolutely perfect for the theme and flavor of this deck, and that is Moonlight Hunt. It's an instant for 1 and a green. We choose target creature we don't control, and then each creature we control that's a wolf or a werewolf deals damage equal to its power to that creature. The creature that we are choosing does not get to replicate this ability on any of our creatures. So this isn't a fight spell. This is, we're just going to straight up kill your dude spell. 4 copies of Midnight Hunt. All right, next up we have 3 copies of Sundering Growth. For any combination of 2 Selesnya mana at instant speed, we can destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then we can populate. So this is far superior over Naturalize, over Disenchant, just for the purposes of being able to populate. So for the purposes of this deck, it's just going to read 2 green mana, pay 2 green mana, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then create a 2/2 wolf as long as we already have a 2/2 creature, a 2/2 wolf creature token in play. 3 copies of Sundering Growth. 1 copy of Beast Within. And this is to help us deal with any potential planeswalkers or other enchantment spells or any other creatures that maybe we can't just get rid of because we don't have enough wolves in play. Pretty much Beast Within is just our do-it-all removal spell. It can take care of any permanent as long as it doesn't have protection or hexproof or shroud or indestructibility. And we gift the controller of that with a 3/3 green beast. So Beast Within, 1 copy as our wild card removal spell. And our last card of this deck tech and one of our finishers, it's mono green, we're attacking with creatures, so of course we have to include 1 copy of the finishing Beastmaster Ascension. 2 and a green, it comes down as an enchantment whenever a creature we control attacks, just like the mana producing spell of Druid's Repository. We don't have to line up the damage. We don't have to send combat damage to creatures or players or planeswalkers. It's just whenever we turn them sideways, we put quest counters on this enchantment. And as long as Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more of these quest counters on it, creatures we control are going to get +5/+5. And that is all. This is the Kitchen Table series. This is Deck Tech number 57. This is Mono Green Elves. And lastly, this is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.